We're back with Vice President Joe Biden. Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us. Now let's move on to what a crisis that many call the greatest crisis since World War II for the United States. 63,000 Americans have died in this pandemic, and I could ask you what you were going to do in the abstract. But the fact is, if you were elected president in November, then chances are very good, if Dr. Fauci and other doctors are right, you are going to be sitting in the Oval Office when this pandemic comes back again in the middle of flu season. How should America prepare for the second wave that Dr. Fauci says could be even worse than the first?
We should be preparing now. Look, Joe, one of the things I've said from the beginning, the president should empower a supply officer, someone who is in charge of making sure that all the material needed, all the PPP, all the testing, all the things we know we have to get done are getting done. And create the Defense Production Act for make sure that we also deal with the banking side of this, to make sure all the things that, in fact, the Congress, the several trillion dollars they put out there to help businesses, small businesses stay alive, actually get to small business. I'd also establish a pandemic testing board to finally solve the testing problem. I'd open up a new enrollment period for health care. I would also, some early data shows African Americans and communities of color have contracted this disease and died at alarming rates. And I'd get economic relief quickly as we can to those most in need to diminish the impact of this. But we have to have that material, Joe. We have to have everything from enough swabs to the reagents, the testing capacity, to masks, to gloves, to, and he's going so slowly on this.
How do you speed up testing? The president says it's impossible. The HHS official in charge of testing says it's impossible to get 5 million tests per day. What could the president have done from the very beginning? More importantly, what advice do you give President Trump this morning on what he should do from this point forward to make the United States stronger in the area of testing, not only for the virus, but for antibodies?
Well, first of all, he should take responsibility. He's in charge. He talks about being the commander-in-chief. The Defense Production Act, as I said way back several months ago, gives him the authority to surge to any private entity that they should be making, like ventilators, like he went to General Motors finally. They should be doing the same thing with everything from swabs to the reagents. He talks about all these machines being available. The machines are available to test, but the reagents and the swabs and the material that get the answer are not available. He should be moving very quickly to have done that. He should be making sure that we have a stockpile of all the protective gear that is needed in order to make sure that, God forbid, that this does come back, which it probably will, that the hospitals are not left flat-footed like they were before, that the first responders are covered. So many of those over 60,000 people who died, Joe, were first responders. They were doctors, they were nurses, they were medics, they were police officers, they were firefighters, etc. They didn't have the equipment. So we have to get the number of new cases down from what it is now in order to begin to be able to take control. But in the meantime, we cannot let up on what needs to be done. One of the things every morning, this morning I get a brief from medical docs on the status of where things are. And, the former head of the, anyway, one of the things that were stated, the analogy made, he said there's all these machines. Well, it's like having a washing machine where there's no water and you don't have any detergent. There are machines, but you need the material. Why isn't he insisting that be moved quickly and insist that this begin to happen? And there's so much not being done, Joe, to not only deal with what we have at our hands now, but to prepare for when this is going to come back.
Yeah. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.